Hey, kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another edition of Big Hairy News with Big Hairy Pat and Big Hairy Cherry. Chewy, good evening to you, sir.
Good evening.
Before we get into the show, which are talking politics, flooding, and a mouth breathing mare, I sent you a text in the weekend because I was watching your favorite film from last year.
Oh, yes.
And I liked it a lot. But what was the text that I sent you? Something like, what the fuck am I actually watching? I'm enjoying it, but what am I actually watching with, what's it called again?
What was happening at that?
Everywhere, everything, all at once.
What was happening at that exact point?
It was just the moment where she started to jump backwards and forwards, and the guy put the headphone on her in the elevator and kind of...
Oh, yes. Yeah,
because up until that point, you were still kind of going, is this all a dream? Is there a psychological breakdown? Is this what's going on? So I thought, you've spoken this movie up a lot. So I had to go, what the fuck am I actually watching here? But I have to say, really interesting movie. And it's going to win a ton of awards. And one of the reasons it'll win a ton of awards is because it's new and a unique way of telling a story. It reminded me a little bit of Slumdog Millionaire, not thematically, but you know how that was a completely different way of doing cinema. And that won a ton of awards, so I think it's going to get a big.
So my favorite story that's come out of that, right, is the team that edited it all together.
Yeah,
were not skilled or knowledgeable editors. They learned it off tutorials on YouTube how to edit a film, which is amazing to me. Like you don't need necessarily the schooling or the education. You just go and do it. Just do a crazy film with lesbian sausage fingers and googly eyes.
Yeah.
Win an Oscar first time out. It's great.
I said if that's true, not like I don't believe you, but if that's the case, that's amazing because, like, you know, doing a little bit of editing here and there, you look at someone who does it properly, right? Like there, but that is pretty amazing actually. So yes, everywhere, everything all at once. I want to go everything, everywhere, everything all at once. Really interesting film. If you like films, I think also really interesting to watch it for how it's made and how it's telling the story.
It's just really good.
And also the story itself. So it was very cool. And she's just off the charts, eh? Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon fame and Crazy Rich Asians. She's amazing. Yeah.
And obviously the return of Short Round. It's an amazing Hollywood comeback.
Didn't put two and two together.
Have you just clicked on that?
Yeah.
Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
Short Round. Never got work in Hollywood after that ever. Thought that there was no comeback from that. And then he's in that film and he's smashing it out of the park.
Yeah, it was amazing. Anyway, really good film. I just wanted to acknowledge to you what the fuck, but that's cool. That's cool. Okay, so we have a conversation today we're about to start about what's happening in Auckland, and we want to bring into the show to join us as a part of the conversation our token Aucklander, comedian Tim Batt. Tim, good evening to you, sir.
Kia ora.
Kia ora, sir. Doing well?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. I'm shocked to hear that they taught themselves on the fly how to edit that movie, though. It's insane.
Yeah, actually,
so good.
New Zealand's probably, arguably, you might say, Tim, why would you say arguably? But arguably New Zealand's most successful podcaster, Tim Batt, based around watching a movie over and over and over and over again. So tell us, any thoughts around everywhere, everything all at once? Have you seen it? What do you think?
I loved it. Yeah, I loved it. It was just a cool movie to experience. I think you maybe intellectualized it too much, Pat.
Sorry.
You just got to go, this is whatever I want it to be. This could be someone's psychological breakdown. It could be an exploration of quantum mechanics happening in a way that we can understand. This could be the infinite universe theory. It's whatever or just it's silly, you know? Yeah. It's whatever you want it to be.
I think you're right. And the silliness about it, let me just say, Tim, your microphone's very, very hot. If you can lower it a little bit, that'll be good from this end, but that's okay. I think as well, because we've just had this whole sort of range of Avengers, multiverse, multiple universe, you know, infinite universe, all that kind of stuff. And this was a movie in that world, but just told so differently. And that's a part of the thing that I loved about it. It was great.
Yeah.
All right. Now, Tim, we've got you on board as our token Aucklander. First of all, you're not sitting floating on something, so you seem to be safe and okay yourself.
Yeah, that's right. We did pretty well, all things considered, because I live in West Auckland now, as of pretty recently, so we were right in the thick of it. But the house did very, very well. I was kind of surprised. I was like just walking around the house a lot to see where the roof was going to give out or where the wall was going to let stuff in. The garage did flood because I kind of ignored the garage, which sucks. I'm in there now. It's effectively my office, my work from home office. So luckily nothing too expensive got damaged, but totally sodden carpets that I've just been attempting to dry out and kiss goodbye today. I'm just like, these things stink. Because I was literally... I spent a couple of hours like bailing water out with a bucket from the bit outside to try and level the wood level down.
I haven't spoken to you for probably a year or 18 months, but the last time we spoke, were you planning on building? Is this the house that you built, or is that something?
Oh yeah, we were planning. Yeah, we were planning on building that. All fell apart. I think just because of all the COVID stuff, all the timeline of it got kicked out, and every time we got an update on how much it would cost, it had jumped up like 25% because of all the supply chain stuff. So it got to the point where we were like, we can't pay for this. This is not a thing we can afford anymore.
Cool. Well, good to hear you're safe, and hopefully the insurance companies are going to be hit up a lot in Auckland over the next few weeks and months, and you'll be all sorted once that gets sorted. But I saw a comment from yours, or actually a little clip of a video of yours doing some stand up, talking about Aucklanders are coming together for one reason. Finally, all Aucklanders are coming together, and I just thought maybe I'd give you a bit of a lead in and say you can explain to us why Aucklanders are all coming together at the moment, and maybe we can then talk about the reason behind why they are.
Yeah, well, I think we were all in need of a little bit of catharsis from the last 48 hours, and I got pulled in to do a comedy gig quite last minute by Guy Montgomery because someone got sick, I think, so I got pulled in with a couple of hours notice, and I've just been mainlining all of the tweets and the news and the updates and the press conferences from our mayor, and was musing to a packed room full of people in a Greyland bar called Frida's that it was quite nice for a change that Aucklanders were uniting under a common enemy who just happened to be the mayor of Auckland, which is the vibe that I'm feeling at the moment. Like right from the Prime Minister to Joe Punter in the street, just everyone is pretty unified and going, this guy is a hot mess and really not the dude we need in that seat right now.
Yeah, I think I tweeted out today, you really see the credibility of leadership when you have an emergency. It's all very well to steer a ship in calm waters when there's a perfect breeze and everything's going well, but when that fucking storm kicks up, that's when you see real leadership.
It's true, but it's also not a hard thing. And I hate to be sort of politically cynical about this, but it's true. It's a pretty easy way to get a free win. Like politicians can really easily capitalize on a huge event like this because the formula isn't super complicated. You are conciliatory, you are empathetic, you get on your comms, you're very present for the media, you chuck a high vis on, you're not combative and evasive and playing tennis when it's happening. And then when people, quite rightly bring it to your attention that you call this state of emergency, which is, being the mayor, you don't have that much power a lot of the time, realistically, but this is when the shit hits the fan and you've actually got a job to do. And he's just failed spectacularly at something that I think any half decent political adult could have done a better job at.
Yep. I think he nailed it though.
There was some gimmies. There were some real gimmies that he's just saying.
You nailed it though. You need empathy, which he doesn't have.
He doesn't. I find I hate to play armchair psychologist, but I find him quite a narcissist, to be honest.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
It's always fascinating to watch him like with the media. I mean, I'll never forget this thing.
Oh,
when he went to the opening of an event that the media were invited to cover, and when they tried to cover it, he gave them this. It's like
this is the thing, right? We've only had a few opportunities to see him, honestly, in the media because there was a story that came out 6 days prior to Friday when all the storm happened. Cataloging all of the media requests that he's received, which I think was about 200 or maybe in excess of, and he's granted 2 interviews. And as far as I'm concerned, it's sort of 50% of your job as the mayor is communicating with your constituency through the media. Like that's that's what you're there to do. That's what you're getting paid for, in addition to the decision-making stuff. And the fact that I think Matthew Hooton, who's his handler and a very experienced man in this realm, recognizes that he is a massive liability as soon as he's in front of a camera or any kind of reporter, and has done a good job of shielding him. And now it's unavoidable that he has to do media now. And you can really see in these moments where he doesn't have the time to get a pre-written statement across or go through the media training and get his points from an advisor. You get an unvarnished version of Wayne Brown, and it's not a pretty picture. That interview with Kim Hill,
that was bad.
Hey, I'll tell you what. No, we'll do this first, Joey. Not to cut you off, Joey. You can come out because what you're just talking about. Tova O'Brien did like a 2-minute bit this morning, and let's play it because in there, some of the clips you're talking about, for people who have missed any of this, it will give us a bit of an idea as to what she sees going on as someone who is working and living in Auckland as well.
It remains a mystery to me why we were so blindsided by the devastating natural disaster that hit Auckland on Friday night, why no one who's tasked with predicting or preparing for these things predicted or prepared for it. But at least one of Auckland's other great mysteries has been flushed out in the process. The curious question of why Auckland Mayor Wayne Brown refuses to do any interviews has been solved. It's because he is exceptionally useless. It's no wonder the communication strategy to manage the new mayor has been to basically lock him up in a cupboard and hope that he doesn't talk to anyone. I received a flurry of messages over the weekend from friends of all political stripes from all over the country every time Wayne Brown opened his mouth. Here is a small sample. Holy shit, did you see that presser? Did that just actually happen? Said one. What an effing train wreck, said another. From an Auckland friend, he's like an old man who got woken up in the night and is grumpy about it. Conversely, another said he's like a petulant teenage boy arguing with everyone with nothing to back it up. And I think this one sums it up perfectly. Unbelievable. Just utterly unbelievable how bad he was. And they're all right. Wayne Brown is a liability. It might have been funny. It might have even been piteous if it wasn't so damn serious. Leaving aside for a minute the fact that he failed to act and his dereliction of duty put lives at risk, what was up with that defensiveness? The bitter, spitting, self-justifying sniping. Much has rightly been made of this comment that Wayne Brown made to Kim Hill when asked about Auckland's preparedness for the natural disaster.
This is an unprecedented event. It'll be interesting to see just how well prepared Wellington is when the earthquake strikes.
An incredible comment. But personally, I was more taken by this exchange.
The weather is getting worse.
Crikey, how can the weather get worse, Mr. Brown? It's been a terrible night.
Well, it's carrying on. I don't know how the weather can get worse. I don't ask it.
What the actual? Who says that? It turns out the Mayor of Auckland does, the steward of the country's biggest city. I just hope it takes Wayne Brown less time to draft his resignation letter than it took him to declare a state of emergency.
There you go. Now, Chewy, I cut you off, but there's kind of echoing what you're saying, Tim, about the performance once he's in front of the media. Chewy, what were you going to say, brother?
Oh, I was just going like, when you talk about disasters and stuff like that being an easy gimme, for me, the Rex said it here in the chat. Bob Parker was the prototype for this type of situation. He was not a great mayor of Christchurch, but Jesus, when the shit hit the fan, he was exactly what they needed.
Yeah.
And Auckland doesn't even have half of that. They don't even have him being a good mayor, and he's just fumbled this one. He just hasn't been there, and then he's dropped the big pot of chili the first opportunity he's got.
Well, I think people also forget this isn't his first time of being mayor. He was mayor of the far north in Whangarei, the Whangarei district. And what I noticed, because I full disclosure, I was did a fundraiser and did a bit of light campaigning for Fiso Collins, who was his opponent for the mayoral race. And what I noticed when I started tuning in is if you heard from anyone up north who had been in the district while he was mayor, everyone hated him. And he was involved in some pretty weird court cases, which I don't know all the details of, so I guess I shouldn't get into on your show and throw you under the you two dudes under the bus with litigious action that'll be pending, I'm sure. But people should look that up, because all that to say, the clues were there, the experience was there. This wasn't a brand new thing. If you actually asked the people who were in the district while he was mayor, it was known that he was useless, and maybe even worse than that.
He also, now this is going to sound a bit mean, right? And I'm generally a nice guy, Tim, but he's a fucking moron. I mean, like, you watch and like, maybe we don't have to play it, but I've got one of the weekend press conferences queued up. Maybe I'll put it on mute. He is literally a mouth breather. He stands in the background, mouth agape, not knowing what's going on, not using the correct verbiage, messing up his words. He just comes across like, and I'm one to speak, I fumble my words all the time, I get it, but he just comes across like, I think I tweeted today, you know, the conclusions from these press conferences for me are he's either way out of his depth or he's a moron. And most respondents I got was, you mean both? Well, yeah, okay, that's probably option 3 is probably fair as well. But I mean, maybe we should play a few minutes of this, or a minute of this, because this is what Tova was referring to, the combative moment. This is a moment where the media is asking the Prime Minister, how did the Prime Minister feel about Aucklanders being kind of feeling like they were let down? And he doesn't let the Prime Minister answer.
How things could be done differently.
But do you have a message for Aucklanders who last night felt abandoned by their city and their government?
Oh,
they weren't.
They certainly
They
weren't.
felt that way.
Well, but they were not. What we were doing was ensuring that they were not actually abandoned. We were ensuring that there was thousands of people out there, and that's what I was doing. But he wasn't here. I was making sure that took place.
Mr. Brown, the people who are also here, of course, were your councillors in their wards out and about. We've spoken to one of them, Jo Bartley, who says she does not believe the response from your office, from the council, was adequate. She was on the ground. She was seeing what was happening. People were telling her, where are the comms? So what do you say to her concerns?
Shane Henderson, who's the councillor of this, was the first person to be on site in the street that we were at before, actually. And he immediately rang me. And so that we had, and that was useful communication. That's communicating so that we know what was going on the ground. One or two of our councillors chose to communicate, but there's no sense communicating things which are just your view. You have to communicate facts, and the facts were coming from these people here. And
so there's an interesting point before I cut out of the video. There's a really interesting thing he said there, right? And I'll just repeat what he said. He said this, and I wrote it down. There's no sense communicating things which are just your view. You have to communicate facts. And I typically agree with that. The only problem with that is several weeks earlier, he seemed pretty happy defending his actions by saying, well, it's just my opinion.
When I spoke previously about airport capital raisings, I was only assuming or guessing there would be one. I don't know any specific knowledge that there will be one.
So
now,
when he was talking about, yep, go.
If I can tag in there, Pat, I just want people to put a highlighter under this. That particular incident that he's talking about caused a publicly traded stock to have to halt trading because of a fumble that he had out loud in a council meeting, which was public. He said something that he shouldn't have, and they had to halt a publicly traded stock. That the mayor did that. Like, what the hell?
And then his defense was, well, it's just my opinion. And the point I'm making it now, when councillors are giving their opinions, his defense again is, well, you got to always use the facts. So, and I know that this happens in politics. You will tell whatever narrative you want, but I want people to see it as well as understand that's how politics works.
Yeah, I think you will have a pretty easy time if you're looking for hypocritical sort of commentary that you can string together, even in the limited sort of media exposure that the dude's had, because he grasps for anything. Like, it's really sad, and he's not going anywhere. Like, you can tell. It's this. I don't, as far as I'm not, an expert on these matters, but the smart people who are really into local government issues that I follow online have been talking about the fact that there's no real way to remove a mayor unless they're gravely ill. So there's not really any mechanism for him to be removed, and it just doesn't seem. It's kind of the Trumpian thing, right? It's like. it doesn't matter what the facts are, what reality is, or what everyone in the world is telling him, which is right now, you are not capable of doing this job in a really tough time where we need someone capable in there. It'll brush past him. He's like the walking personification of the trope of like a stale white boomer male. Like he's the living embodiment of everyone on the left stereotype of a guy who's failed up, you know?
Yeah. I mean, is this now finally time that we stop electing 75-year-old dudes to make decisions in a world that they no longer understand?
I think it is worthwhile trying to point this event and this conversation in a direction of going, hey, how do we fix the low voter turnout in local elections? Because that's what's delivered this.
Yeah,
property owners mobilize and they communicate and they can rally around a candidate. And we saw it here there was a lot of candidates in the mayoral election. And I was hoping that all of them would stay in until the last bit, because on the right, they were totally splitting the vote. There was a bunch of them. And Efeso Collins, I was hoping could just kind of like come up the side and have a somewhat unified left and centre left voting constituent. But it didn't pan out that way, because they did all get out eventually, and it coalesced around Wayne Brown. And as I say, because they have resources, it's property owners is what it is. Yeah. They've got money, they use it, they come together, they make sure that their person gets in, and they make sure that they, don't raise rates. I can't believe that no one's kind of bringing up the fact that this is a guy who ran on making sure that rates would either, stay the same with inflation or go down. This is what rates pay for, guys. Infrastructure, to make sure that the stormwater in an event like this can go back out to the ocean in a way where it's not destroying houses.
I know. I heard a fantastic. Oh, sorry, Joe, you go.
I was just saying, this is something we've talked about on this show heaps, of like not wanting rates to go up, but also being anti Three Waters. And then this is like the perfect example. It's just coalesced around this one thing.
Yeah.
I heard a particular right-wing commentator today, not that they're really a commentator, more of a broadcaster, going on and on and on and on and on, basically giving him a pass when they've spent the past 2 years basically, pitchforks after Jacinda Ardern sort of thing. And now they're complaining that people have pitchforks after Wayne Brown. And this fucking moron of a commentator was talking about, infrastructure, and we got to get the infrastructure sorted out. And there's not the infrastructure for the number of houses. And he's just spent the past 18 months rallying against Three Waters. I'm just like, there is a solution to fixing up the infrastructure. And what the government put forward was Three Waters. And now everyone's made that such a kind of, has demonized it. Look, the communication of Three Waters has been terrible. The ideas behind it are great and sound, right? But this person who's been rallying against Three Waters forevermore is now going, how do we fix our infrastructure? It's like, dude, exactly. We did this the other day, Tim, we were talking about Chris Hipkins. It's going to stick one day soon, hopefully before the election. Chris Hipkins had one very good line on the AM show the other day when he was talking about all the teachers going to Australia. And he went, yeah, because they pay them more. Do you know why? Because they pay more tax. So, and I'm like, that's a really strong message. It's like, taxes go up, keep your teachers, keep your nurses. And I'm just like, who do we know that we can get a copy of this show to point out to Chris Hipkins, there's your strength. Taxes go up, taxes stay up, nurses stay, right?
Yeah.
And that's the same sort of thing about rates and infrastructure.
Absolutely. My wife's a GP, and so I've kind of had a front row seat to all the stuff that's been happening in the primary healthcare system, and the amount that we pay nurses in this country is like criminal. It's crazy, and it's no wonder that we can't attract them and keep them here. Like, it really isn't.
Yeah,
my sister's a nurse, and it's infuriating.
It's nuts. What part of the country does she live in, Chewy?
She's here in Dunedin. She works at the
Oti-poti.
Good for her. Like, because you get sort of, these things are kind of, they seem disparate, but they're kind of politically related, or they all come under a similar umbrella where you have these insane property prices because there's this entrenched belief in New Zealand that the government is there to protect the price of your house. Like that's the role. I'll never forget it, but watching the leaders debate, and I think it was actually before Jacinda came in. I think it was, so what was that, 2017? But it might have been the 2021. I can't remember. But Jacinda Ardern, in fact, sorry, it was 2020. Jacinda Ardern saying on the debate stage, like, it's the job of the Prime Minister to make sure property prices don't go down. And I was like, wait, what? Like, we've got this centralized communist system for this one specific asset class in New Zealand, which just so happens to not be taxed, no matter how much it goes up in value. And like, these things aren't as unrelated as people think. And there's been a very, successful project by people with money to sort of insert ideas through the media. Trickle-down economics is a great example. You can't have your cake and eat it too. There are consequences for paying less tax.
Yeah,
there are consequences for underfunding your public infrastructure and locking rates and demonizing anyone who might even suggest that rates might need to go up to pay for some essential infrastructure problems. Look at Wellington. Look at shit coming out of like the central city, just under the ground.
Yeah. Oh, it rains, the harbour smells delightful.
Yeah. It shouldn't be the case.
I mean, ratepayers groups are just, oh, Jesus. If only a fire. They wouldn't be able to get out.
I understand. Speaking of, you said earlier about voter turnout. I think 181,000 people voted for Wayne Brown. I saw that on Twitter today. So that's close to only 10%. It's probably 12% of the total population of Auckland, because it's about 1.5, 1.6 million. So something like that, less than 15%, more than 10% of the population put him in. Speaking of that, though, as well, Tim, Efeso Collins is joining us tomorrow night. So we'll have him on here and have a chat about stuff as well. We've been talking today. So, yeah. So I didn't realize you were involved in his helping him out somewhat. But yeah.
I've actually not met him ever, but I put together a fundraiser for him, which I was a close contact of a person with COVID, so I had to stay home, unfortunately. But yeah, did a little bit of work for the campaign.
It's very good. Well, is there anything else you want to cover off on, Tim, before we head off? I mean, me and Chewy are going to talk about polls in a second, and they're for some reason thinking that these polls have some validity 3 seconds after. there's two little things in there that I think should be quite concerning for national, but we'll get to that. Anything you want to jump in on before we sign off on the mouth breathing mayor?
Nah, man. I feel like it's been a tirade of 28 minutes of hate. So I would invite people to, well, actually, let me say this to take the stinger out of it. It has been amazing watching the community action and people's generosity of spirit and tenacity and coming together, and just the community spirit from so many people helping each other through this thing. There are examples of it everywhere you look. And whilst it is very frustrating having a really incompetent dude in the mayoral seat, there are so many examples of wonderful, intelligent, hardworking people, generous people doing amazing stuff through this. So if you're in a position to find the charities, that will have a great effect, ones that are bedded in, City Mission, Salvation Army, these sorts of places that are bedded in with their communities already, and if you can contribute, please do. But there's a lot of good happening. Like, this stuff's going to keep happening. This stuff isn't going anywhere. Unfortunately, that's the sad reality of it. And I have been almost like pleasantly surprised by how Auckland has come together to help each other through this. So focus on the goodies, not just the dickheads.
Cool, like Tim. That. Hey, look, good to hear you safe. Stay safe. And there's a bit more rain coming your way, so hopefully that won't make it much more difficult for many more people. But we appreciate you sharing your insights into the mouth breathing mayor, and we'll wish you a fond farewell and talk again soon.
Take it easy, guys. Bye bye.
Right, cheers, Tim Batt, and lots of people keen to see Tim. That's good. We've got Peter saying the classic Kim Hill interview, which of course was about Mayor Brown.
It was just soundbite after soundbite after soundbite. It was amazing.
Brian says Wayne go away. So I knew it was a play on words, but then I just thought about Auckland and that just put two and two together. It's actually cleverer than I gave it credit for, Brian. Well done. It's the legend Tim Batt, awesome guest. We've got Kim saying it's not a surprise if you had any debates with him. He's got him by complaining and blaming others. Peter says fucking amazing, zero credibility. Speaking of the mayor, Kim says she works in mental health. Talk about underfunded. Josie's pissed off because she missed Tim, but as several people said, just go watch the video afterwards. I'll make a clip. I'll make a Tim clip and we'll put it up either tonight or tomorrow morning as well. And V says hard to believe that a city with so many caring people could have let Wayne Brown become their mayor. That's the
rub. That's the whole, like, they had 35% turnout for their election. You know, you mentioned the tiny amount, the percentage of people who voted for him. Yeah. And in that, you know, you've got the fact that landowners get 2 votes. So it could be even less than that. Just clarify that for me because I'm a bit dim, nice but dim. 2 votes if they've got multiple properties, like in different areas. Is that what you're saying? Well, you get your personal vote and you're a ratepayer. So, right. Okay. I see what you're saying. Vote for your property, essentially. I think is kind of how it rolls. I understand what you're saying. But yeah, absolutely tiny. And this is something that we have seen throughout the country, that you get declining engagement in it, and especially in local body. And I'm guilty of that. Like the last, I've only ever voted in 2 local body elections. And I consider myself quite politically engaged, and I give a shit about things, but I'd never bothered. I wonder if this is the time to bring up the conversation. Maybe this is the time to bring up the conversation around reducing the age to vote, because you know that for the centralized politics, it has to be a 75%. They're never going to get that, but they only need 50.1% to change the voting age for local body. I wonder if they did that, if that would start engagement better, because there's a lot of research that says if you start voting young, you're more likely to keep voting as well. Yeah, absolutely. So maybe, and I think the left, you know, being the bastion where we come from, I think the left would be pretty keen to get some of those younger voters out there, because if you're probably 16, you're probably keen as mustard to give it a crack, I would think. Yeah, because I was talking with a colleague of mine who again is quite interested in politics and that sort of thing. She didn't know that the local body elections were on until they were over. And it was must be very unengaged though. Must be very unengaged. It was just like, okay, so how did you miss that? And she goes, I didn't see any advertising. I didn't see anybody putting out stuff on social media. I didn't know anything about the candidates. And when you think about how local body elections are run, that makes sense, right? Yeah, it's old media. Yeah, you know, it's newspapers and that sort of thing. And then you get the candidates, and you look at them, like you could get a picture of pretty much any council in this country, and show that to a voter and go, do you think one of these people represent you? And they don't. Yeah. You know, because the voting base is old, and it is old and white. I still think that, you know, I know that some people won't like this idea, but I have a caveat to it that voting should be compulsory in New Zealand, maybe not local body, but certainly national. And all you need to do is, and it should also be digitized, and there should be an option for none of the above. So therefore you have to vote, but you can choose to not participate if you don't vote. I don't know if that would increase when it comes to local body politics. It would flow on, but yeah, there's another way to get the voting numbers up. Basically say to people, it's part of your civic duty. You have to vote. And if you're a conscientious objector, you still have to cast a vote, but you can cast a vote that says conscientious objector, basically. Yep. Brent in the chat here, Waiheke has an excellent turnout for local body elections, possibly because of strong community media channels. Yeah. All right. And yeah, I mean, as much as we want to dunk on social media and that sort of thing, that's a really good example. Also, the amount of information that didn't flow out of official Auckland City Council media channels, but flowed out of the councillors, flowed out of the community groups. Yeah. People reporting stuff on TikTok just as they saw it. You know, the amount of information that was out there was a lot. There was a lot. It was really interesting to look at TikTok. I've been watching some videos online about TikTok recently, and that's where I got most of the footage that I saw from the floods
from TikTok. So going straight there and getting them, and then the media, the mainstream media, if you want to call them that, or old media, pick up on the TikToks, and that's how they make their channel. So just go straight to the source. IS Bay Hudson says reduce the voting age, but I think remove votes from older voters. And so speaking of that, speaking of media, speaking of what's happening in the media, I'm assuming they didn't know the other one was doing it, but there was 2 polls reduced today, 2 series of polls reduced today. And we're going to have a look at it. Now, I'll say right from the outset, most of the stuff in these polls is kind of pointless. It's based around
on it because it's a good result and everything like that. But
there are 2 things. There are 2 things that are really quite worrying for the National Party, and we'll get to those shortly. But let's have a look. I've actually got several different clips here, but I'm only going to play one clip. Then I've got some screen grabs to show you from the other channel, other stories. So let's have a look at TVNZ's story around their poll results today and see what they had to say.
The poll was taken from Wednesday until last night, so it captures Chris Hipkins' first days in the job, including the flooding in Auckland. So let's take a look. Labour is on 38, up 5, its best result since January last year. National is only just behind on 37, down 1 from our last poll at the beginning of...
In my opinion, this stuff, the whole party vote, it's kind of pointless. It doesn't really mean much to me, to be really, really frank with you. And both channels go on and on and on and on and on and on and on about how close it's going to be. This means nothing. Some of the other stuff, though, is quite interesting.
December.
And the trend is interesting.
ACT is on 10, down 1. The Greens are on 7, a drop of 2. And New Zealand First is on 2, down 2 from last time. Let's have a look at some of the other parties now. And the figure 1 features a lot here. Te Pāti Māori top, the Legalised Cannabis Party, Democracy NZ and New Conservative are all on 1. So let's crunch these numbers and see how they translate to seats in Parliament.
Blah, blah, blah,
National
blah, blah.
gets 47 seats, this block here in blue. Add in 13 from ACT, that makes 60, just shy of the 61 needed to form a government. It would need the 2 seats from Te Pāti Māori, but it's close because the Greens bring in 9, adding to the 49 here in red, and together Labour and the Greens have 58. Even with the Māori Party, that's a hung parliament and not enough to govern. So, bringing up the preferred Prime Minister numbers to gauge first impressions of the new
Here's the
Prime
first
Minister.
thing that matters.
Chris Hipkins is on 23. Christopher Luxon is just behind on 22. David Seymour is in 3rd place on 6. Support for Jacinda Ardern is lingering, even though she's not in the mix anymore. And Winston Peters and Greg.
So, this is the first metric that matters in this poll. Forget the party vote and stuff, but for Christopher Luxon to not be preferred Prime Minister today when Johnny New Shoes has been there for 4 days, that is I don't care how, there's a bump in a new... No. Christopher Luxon has been putting forward his wares for 12 months plus as to why he should lead the country. They basically took out Jacinda, if we put it that way, and he still can't get to be the most preferred Prime Minister. This is one of the 2 metrics that is incredibly, in my opinion, embarrassing and concerning for the National Party, Chewy.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I love that there's people that still see Jacinda as their preferred Prime Minister. Maybe they just haven't seen the news. That is bad.
It's terrible. And look, they're playing it down, they're playing it off, but this is one, and there's another metric that we'll get to shortly, which is actually from the Newshub story about trustability. That should be a huge concern for National. Let's get to, we're going to play the whole of this story, and then I've got some screen grabs for you.
Green MP Chloe Swarbrick are both on 2. So some very interesting numbers to mark the start of election year and the start of Chris Hipkins' tenure.
Riding the honeymoon bump.
He's been in the job less than a week and Chris Hipkins has already been thrown into a natural disaster.
That's the nature of being in government. You don't always get to determine what issues you want to focus on. Sometimes things come to the surface that you just have to respond to. And clearly the flooding in Auckland has made its way to the top of the list.
The Prime Minister's expression telling a story about how he felt some things were handled, but the polls are showing people are giving him a chance.
While I'm encouraged by the poll results, we've still got a lot of work ahead of us.
The National leader perhaps not quite so encouraged.
A very sweaty Chris Luxon, I'm sorry.
He reckons he's not sweating Labor's good numbers.
It's not unexpected that a new leader gets a bounce, and not unexpected from my point of view. Not unexpected that a new leader gets a bounce.
Here's the thing, yeah? Like, there's a new talkback station, right? We just played Tova O'Brien's piece from it, Today FM. This is kind of similar, because that was a talk station called Magic. They got a new leader, i.e. they got new branding and new people on board. This would be similar to all of a sudden they were the #1 preferred talkback radio station in the country. Like, to have a brand new entity still beat out the person who's been saying, I'm the best for you guys, I'm the best for the country for 12 months. This is all bullshit. It's not to be expected. Well, that's not what they would have been saying behind closed doors. They would have been gutted. They would have hoped that they would have seen Christopher Luxon shot up into the 30s and then it would have been on to the election. So this is significant, not necessarily the poll results, but what people are saying about Luxon versus Hipkins. And I don't care what people say, a lot of people vote for the leader over and above the party.
Bounce like this and the polls will move around.
ACT says it's just a flash in the pan.
They call him Prime Minister Chippy. I think he's just a chip off the old block.
On these numbers, Te Pāti Māori could force a hung parliament or make Christopher Luxon Prime Minister.
The reason this is pointless,
parliament, it will be Te Pāti Māori will be deciding who the government
because no one has any idea if these are the results, so it's stupid talking about what would you do if it was like no one knows yet.
To get us across the line.
Some of Labor's support has been snaffled from the Greens.
We expected some movement when we saw a change in Prime Minister, so not too surprising.
We also asked, do you approve or disapprove of the way Chris Hipkins is handling his job as Prime Minister? 46% approve of the job he's doing so far, 10% disapprove, and a big chunk don't know yet. That gives him an approval rating of 36.
Okay. This is the second. There's actually a third one as well. So maybe there's three things about it. This is the second thing that really matters that National should be panicking about. Remember, they've spent a year saying, don't vote for them. Don't vote for them. They haven't actually said very much of you should vote for us yet, but they've spent a year spending, don't vote for them. Don't vote for them. They're bad. Don't vote for them. So the brand spanking you, like he still smells like a new car, new leader, has got a 36 approval rating. This is the thing that should worry National, maybe above anything else.
Better than Jacinda Ardern's result last year. When it comes to Christopher Luxon and his job as National leader, 43% approve. That's similar to Chris Hipkins. 34% disapprove, giving an approval rating of just 9.
That is significant. Now, you could argue that Chris Hipkins, a lot were undecided, and okay, sure, fair. But still, to have Christopher Luxon have such a high disapproval rating is a concern. Right. We're going to have a look at some other things as well, because I got some screenshots here as well. So this is the Newshub poll. We're not going to play the video. It's got the screenshots for you. And you can see again, it's about a 1% difference with a similar increase for Labor. Now, these numbers don't mean very much, but the trend for both polls done separately with different people around the country by different companies, Labor's had a bump up, National's come down significantly, and Labor is now the biggest party according to these polls, right? Also, when it comes to preferred Prime Minister in the Newshub thing, again, a 1 point difference. They're different numbers, but Hipkins is 1 point above Luxon, which is where they were for National, because there's the TVNZ, different numbers, but a 1 point difference in the TVNZ and a 1 point difference in the Newshub. That should be a massive concern. But the other big concern for the National Party out of these numbers is this one. Do you trust the leaders? 53% trust Hipkins, 27% don't, versus 37% trust Luxon, 44% don't. Those numbers, so there's three things. There's the trust, there's the leadership number, and there's the approval rating number. Those three things from all this polling actually matter, mean something, and should be incredibly concerning to the National Party, Chewy.
I am ready to be right. I am ready to be right.
I know what you're going to say.
He's going to get rolled before the election. He's going to get rolled. Will it be Judith Collins off the top rope with the steel chair? Maybe.
No.
Maybe.
Not if they want to win.
Are you counting out Judith Collins with a sneak
I am.
knife in the back?
Well, but I think
who will it be then?
No,
Who
but
will
I
it be?
think
Because it's not that it's not going to happen. It's going to be
I think it's
who's
going to be
gonna do
Christopher
it.
Luxon. No, I think it's going to be Christopher Luxon myself. But it would never be Judith Collins in my opinion, because I think there's enough sensible people, sensible meaning intelligent wise, in the National Caucus
Is she
that
being
know
held back?
that
So
know
she can't throw hands.
that know the public hate her. So you're not going to put her, and she's not going to go anywhere. But I still disagree with you about that. But I get what you're saying. So what do you think?
I tell you what, if I'm right,
then a bottle of something
devastating.
coming your way.
It'll be devastating. But yeah, I think it comes down to the fact that we have seen Luxon over his time, and people can see that he's not authentic. He's coached. He's trying to hit talking points. He's trying to cosplay being the everyman, and he's not.
Yeah.
And then the moment Chris Hipkins gets up there, he's genuine. I think to have something like the Auckland floods straight out of the gate, to show off what he's able to do was, I think it would have been a case of, oh, come on, man, I'm in this job 11 minutes. Let me settle. And also going, right, well, here's an opportunity. I cannot fuck this up.
Yeah. Look, and there are plenty of people here saying a similar thing about how these polls don't mean much. I actually agree. Like that whole kind of TVNZ and Newshub going, oh, it would be a hung, but that's all bullshit, because the only poll that matters with that actually is the one on election day. However, to have two different polls on two different days, have the leader of the brand new leader of Labour leapfrog the leader of National, and to have two of those polls basically point towards distrust of Luxon. Yes, one of them was what's the approval rating, the other one was do you trust them, but it's the same sort of thing, pointing towards a lacking of trust of Christopher Luxon. I think those things, those are significant, and I wonder if that's what their internal polling showing them as well, because there is the thing about Christopher Luxon, there is the thing about his Christendom, there's the thing about abortion is murder, there's the thing about workers' rights and being a CEO. I don't know, does all that come across as a bit smarmy and harder to trust? I mean, what is it about Chris Hipkins that makes him easier to trust? I mean, I don't know the answer to this question. I guess I'm pontificating out loud and wondering what it's all about. But I wonder.
Do you look at those numbers?
Yeah.
And to steal a phrase from Luxon here and go, he's been perfectly clear, and people have seen that, and that is a reflection of what has been seen.
Yeah. And look, I guess the other thing though, basing on just harking back to what you said about getting rid of someone, getting rid of him, who would replace him that would then be more trustworthy? That's the question.
Oh, I don't think they have anyone personally, but I'm biased as hell.
And I wonder if this is also echoing exactly what they've been saying about Luxon versus Key. It's like Christopher Luxon is John Key without the likability. Is that what we're seeing in these polls? I'm not saying you had to like him, Chewy, but lots of people thought he was likable.
No. And look, I can acknowledge the fact that I didn't personally like Key, but many people did. He had more genuineness in him, even if I didn't like it, than Luxon does. I haven't seen what I would consider an authentic Luxon now. I've seen Luxon trying to fit into Luxon the politician, and it's not working. He's wearing some sort of human suit.
Carl mentions debates. I don't know much about Chippy in debate form, but Chippy versus Luxon in the debates, I wonder what are we going to see there?
I cannot wait. We're going to do that live, aren't we?
With alcohol.
Yes, absolutely, with our bingo game. But yes, the debates are something, and again, like I'm always torn on the debates because it's kind of like a political blood sport. It doesn't really decide anything, but I want to see the two leaders have at each other.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't let a debate influence my vote. It's got to be, as one of the people in chat said, it's got to be about policy. You seriously have to vote on policy. A lot of people,
but people don't.
I like these guys.
Yeah, but people
I
don't.
believe these guys.
Yeah. People saying that Judith got a bump in the polls. Is it Angela? Angela says none of these polls mean anything. How many were polled? How? But if you want to know that information,
I kind of agree with that.
Well, but hang on. But if you want to know that information, Angela, just go to the website. They always have how many people were polled, where they're from. They have all that information. They are scientific polls. I agree with you that the results, especially of the number in the House, don't matter. But if there's a trend, is 2 polls a trend, or do we need 2 more where Hipkins is in front of Luxon, and where Hipkins is more trusted than Luxon, then that's something. And I think that should be concerning because as Angela says, the only poll that matters is election day. Yeah, fair. But trustworthiness impacts the voting on election day. So that's why I say those things are particularly important. Te Pāti Māori would never work with ACT. It's kind of pointless to state that. I mean, the way that Te Pāti Māori just mentioned, they said they wouldn't let it be a hung under this mythical result. They wouldn't let it be a hung parliament. Now, under those mythical results, if they wouldn't let it be a hung parliament, then they're going with ACT and National, because that would be the only way under those mythical results that there wouldn't be a hung parliament.
And it's not like it hasn't happened before, although Māori Party paid a real price for that.
They did. Yeah, I don't suspect they'll go with. I don't suspect they'll go with them either. But that's not what he said. Amazing for Chippy, agrees with us. Says Old V. Disaster said if there was ever evidence needed of reptiles amongst us at Seymour. Free Soul says what a great result. Brian says if Labor had lost over 4%, the headlines would be disaster for Labor. National losers over 4%. Crickets.
Yeah.
And Josie says hard to ignore how much the right to further right media message Jacinda. The minute she steps down, all of that evaporates.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, right wing media kind of saying, well, as soon as Jacinda's gone, then so's all the support. It hasn't happened.
Yeah.
I think it's more a comment on the team, the party as a whole, rather than just the leader. Or just an outright, like, I don't believe you. I don't like what you're saying from National.
Yeah. Big thanks to our $50 patrons, Kookie and Alex, and also, of course, to a $100 patron as well, which is Rob. If you want to support what we do, if you're enjoying what we do, if you've just tuned in for the first time tonight and you like what we do ask for your help in one of 2 ways. You can either become a patron and help us out, pay the bills and get the bits and bobs done, or you can just be our advocate. Tell people about who we are and what we do. When the clips come out, there'll be a clip with Tim Batt, probably done tomorrow morning. When that gets put out on Twitter, follow me and Chewy on Twitter. Share them around. Ignore the banner here because I still haven't got around to changing that weeknights at 10. This year it's weeknights at 9. But there are several places you can come and support what we do. When we do early releases of interviews and stuff, that shows up on here. We're talking tomorrow to James Renwick from Victoria University, and he has put out an opinion piece on climate change and what's happening in Auckland. Talking to him tomorrow afternoon at 1 o'clock. So after that goes, that will then be put up on the Patreon. So people who are patrons will be able to get early access to that. And I have had confirmed so far tonight that Efeso Collins will come and join us tomorrow night. Of course, the rule here though, Chewy. As soon as you announce someone's coming on, they something happens.
We've been hurt before.
But that's where we're at right now. It's patreon.com/Big Hairy News, as you see going across the bottom of the screen. Anything else, Chewy?
No.
Everyone should go see Everywhere, Everything, All at Once before the Oscars.
Oh, 100%. And look, here's my 3-word review for those. Oh, yeah, review. We'll go with review. Lesbian sausage fingers.
Those sausage fingers are disturbing, eh?
Oh, haunt my dreams. But
I
yes,
like
that was an amazing movie. That came out the same week, or very close to Doctor Strange. What was it? The multiverse?
Into the multiverse or whatever.
So there were 2 movies centered around a multiversal plot.
Yeah.
And Marvel lost because it wasn't the best one.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. And that's the thing I said earlier when Tim came on. It's like, this is a movie about a multiverse like you've never seen before. Especially if you're like me, you've watched all the Avengers and all the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the multiverses that are still going on. And this is just a way that it's told in such a different and fantastic way. So everyone should definitely watch that before the Oscars. And I thank you, Chewy, for reminding me to check it out. And it was a good,
awesome.
Good
Glad
watch.
you enjoyed it.
All right. So tomorrow night we have booked in Fiso Collins. We have booked in James Renwick from University of Victoria, Wellington University of Victoria. However, they've reordered their name now, and I've booked in Chewy. Now this week we're here Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and we might be here in some form on Thursday. I won't be here on Thursday. My partner's having a birthday, and so I'm taking her out for dinner. So I prioritize that. I'm very sorry. I'm going to go spend some of your Patreon dollars. So I'm going to not be here Thursday night, but we're thinking about Chewy and someone else jumping in here and having a bit of a chat with you guys for Thursday night.
And it might work, or it might not.
We'll play that. We'll play that all by ear. So that's it for us. You could log us off tonight if you want, Chewy. Have you got a big end broadcast in the top right-hand corner there?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Well, you can wrap up tonight. You push that once, and then it'll ask you to push it again, and then we're done for the night. So I'll say goodbye, and Chewy can log us off.
Bye-bye. One press, and bye-bye.